The basement door slammed so hard the whole house shook. Then I heard the lock click. My own son, Darren, stood on the other side and said, in a voice that did not sound like my son anymore, "Mom, I need time to think. Just stay down there." I was 82 years old, standing on cold concrete in my house slippers, and the light above me flickered like it was scared too. My heart pounded. My hands shook. And in the corner, under a dusty old table, sat my small metal safe, the one I kept close like a secret. I took one step toward the stairs and called his name, but he was already walking away. Then I heard him say something that made my blood turn to ice. "If you try to scream, nobody will believe you." Why would my own son say that to me, and what was he planning to do while I was trapped underground? I did not cry at first. Not because I was brave, but because my mind went quiet, like it does right before a storm. I listened. I heard Darren's footsteps above. I heard a drawer open. I heard paper shuffle. He was looking for something. I swallowed hard and looked around the basement. It smelled like old wood and paint. My husband, Henry, used to come down here years ago to fix things. After Henry passed away, I stopped coming down. The stairs felt steep now. My knees were not young anymore. But I knew one thing very clearly. Darren did not lock me in here by accident. My safe was not big. It could fit under one arm, but it was heavy. Inside were my important papers. My house deed. My late husband's pension papers. A little cash. And something else Darren did not know about, something I only told Henry before he died. A small notebook with dates, names, and notes about things I never liked, things I kept quiet about because I thought peace was more important. Peace can be dangerous when it makes you silent. I walked slowly to the corner and touched the safe like it was a friend. Then I looked for my phone. My purse was not with me. Of course it was not. Darren made sure I was down here with nothing. I tried the basement window, a small rectangle near the ceiling. It was too high. Even if I reached it, the glass was thick, and outside was the back of the house, covered by bushes. No one would see me. Then I remembered the crawl space. When we bought this house 40 years ago, Henry showed me a small opening behind the furnace area. It led under part of the house. He called it the little tunnel, and said it was good for checking pipes. I had not thought about it in years. I moved behind the shelves, careful not to knock anything over. My back ached. My breathing got louder. I did not want Darren to hear me from upstairs. There it was. A low opening behind a stack of old boxes. The wooden panel was loose. I pulled it gently. Dust flew into my face. I coughed once, then bit my lip to keep quiet. The crawl space was dark. It smelled like soil and old bricks. It was so small I would have to crawl on my elbows. At 82, that sounded almost impossible. But being trapped sounded worse. I went back for the safe. I dragged it across the floor, inch by inch, because lifting it would make too much noise. The metal scraped softly. I stopped and listened. No footsteps. Darren was still busy upstairs. I pushed the safe through the opening first. Then I got down on the floor and slid my body into the darkness. My knees screamed. My shoulders scraped the low beams. For a moment, I panicked. I felt like the earth was pressing down on me. Then I forced myself to breathe slow. "Keep going," I whispered to myself. "Just keep going." I crawled forward, pulling the safe with one hand and pushing myself with the other. Dirt stuck to my sleeves. Cobwebs touched my face. I hated every second of it. But then I heard something above. That made me crawl faster. Darren's voice. He was on the phone. "Yes," he said. "She's down there. She can't interfere. I just need you to bring the papers. We sign today." My stomach turned. Sign what? The crawlspace sloped a little. I remembered Henry saying it led toward the side of the house where the old outdoor cellar doors used to be, before we sealed them. But maybe there was still a way out, a weak point, something not fully closed. I crawled and crawled until my arms felt like jelly. Then, finally, I saw a faint line of light. It was tiny, like a pencil mark in the dark. Hope. I pushed forward until my fingers touched wood. I pressed, and the wood gave a little. Not much, but enough to tell me it was not a wall. It was a panel. I pressed again. A thin crack opened. Cold air rushed in. I almost cried from relief. I pushed with both hands, forgetting the pain. The panel shifted. Then it popped outward with a soft thud. I blinked into daylight. I was outside. Not far. Just along the side of the house, behind thick shrubs. The panel was hidden by overgrown plants. No one would notice it unless they were looking. I dragged the safe out, then pulled myself out like a tired animal escaping a trap. My clothes were filthy. My hair was messy. My heart was still racing. I stood very still and listened. Inside the house, Darren was still talking on the phone. He had no idea I was free. I should have run to the street and screamed for help. But something inside me said, not yet. If Darren thought I was trapped, he would show his true plan. So I moved quietly through the bushes, keeping low. I went around the back fence and toward my neighbor's house, Mrs. Patel. She was a kind woman who always waved and brought me oranges. I knocked once, then again, harder. When she opened the door, her smile vanished. Oh my goodness, Margaret, what happened? I stepped inside, breathing like I had run a marathon. Lock your door, I said. And please, call the police. Mrs. Patel's eyes widened. Police? Why? I held up my shaking hands. My son locked me in the basement. Her mouth fell open. Your son Darren. I nodded. And I whispered, he is about to steal my whole life. Mrs. Patel grabbed her phone, but before she could dial, we heard it. A car door slamming outside my house. Then another voice, not Darren's, calling out, I've got the papers. Where is she? I froze. Because it meant Darren was not alone. And whoever had those papers was about to learn I was missing. Mrs. Patel's hand hovered over her phone, but I caught her wrist gently. Not yet, I whispered. If they hear sirens too early, they will run. I need to know what they are signing. Mrs. Patel looked terrified, but she nodded. She was a sensible woman. Who is there? She asked. I peeked through her window. A tall man in a brown jacket walked up my front steps. He carried a folder under his arm like it was a school assignment. Darren opened the door quickly, too quickly, and pulled him inside. My stomach clenched. I recognized the man's posture, even from far away. It was Victor Lane. Victor used to work with Darren years ago. Darren always said Victor was good with money. I always felt uneasy around him. He talked too smoothly, like he was selling something even when he was just saying hello. Mrs. Patel whispered, do you want me to call someone else? Your daughter. I swallowed. My daughter, Elise, lives an hour away. If I call her, she will rush here and maybe get hurt, or maybe they will scare her. First, we need proof. Proof. That word mattered. Years ago, my husband Henry taught me something. People can tell stories, he said, but papers tell the truth. I looked at my safe sitting on Mrs. Patel's rug like a strange guest. I opened it with shaking fingers. The key was on a chain around my neck. Darren never noticed it. He never noticed small things anymore. Inside the safe, I pulled out my notebook. I had written in it when things felt wrong but nobody wanted to talk about them. I had written about Darren asking for loans and never paying back. I had written about strange letters that came in the mail, letters Darren grabbed before I could read them. I had been quiet. I had been gentle. I had told myself, he is my son. He is just stressed. Now I saw the cost of that silence. I flipped to the last page. 2 weeks ago, I wrote, Darren asked for the deed. Said he wants to help, organize things. I said no. He got angry. He smiled after, but his eyes stayed cold. Mrs. Patel leaned closer. Margaret, what is he trying to do? I said it plainly, because in moments like this, you must speak plainly. He is trying to take my house. He is trying to take my money. And he is trying to make it look legal. Mrs. Patel's face tightened. That is evil. I nodded. But we need to stop it the right way. Mrs. Patel pointed to her small security camera screen on the wall. I have cameras outside, she said. They face the street and part of your driveway. My heart lifted. Can you record what happens? She tapped the screen. It records automatically. I took a deep breath. Then we wait and watch. And if I can, I need to hear their conversation. Mrs. Patel hesitated. How? I looked at her back door. Her garden fence connected to mine. If I moved carefully, I could get close to my kitchen window. That window was always a little loose. Henry never fixed it properly. I used to complain. Now I was grateful. Mrs. Patel grabbed my arm. Margaret, please be careful. I will, I promised. And call the police the moment I signal you. What signal? If I knock 3 times on your back door, I said, call them. Immediately. She nodded, eyes shining with worry. I slipped out through her back door and moved along the fence line. My knees still ached from crawling, but fear can make you move when your body says no. I reached my yard and stayed behind the shrubs. My house looked normal from the outside. That was the scary part. From the street, it was just a quiet home with clean curtains. Inside, my life was being stolen. I crouched under the kitchen window. I could hear voices. Darren's and Victor's, and another woman's voice I did not recognize. Then I heard a sentence that made my chest tighten. Victor said, "Once we have her signature, it is done." The woman laughed, a short sharp laugh. She is 82. She will sign anything if you tell her it's for her medicine. My hands balled into fists. They were talking about me like I was an object, like a chair you move when it is in the way. Darren spoke next, and his voice had a nervous edge. She refused before. That's why I had to, you know. Victor said, locking her up was smart. Just keep her quiet until the notary comes. Notary. That word landed hard. A notary means official papers. This was not just Darren being cruel. This was a planned crime. The woman asked, "Is she still down there?" Darren answered, "Yes. She can't get out." My throat went dry. He said it so easily. Victor said, "Good. Because if she shows up, she can ruin everything." I moved a little to the side and peeked through a small crack in the curtain. I saw them at my dining table. Victor sat with the folder open. Darren stood, pacing, and the woman sat with her phone out, smiling. It was my son's wife, Marlene. My daughter-in-law. She was the one laughing. Marlene had always acted sweet in public. She brought flowers on holidays. She hugged me and called me, Mom, in a soft voice. But I saw now that it was a mask. Under the mask was someone who wanted what I owned. Victor slid a paper across the table. "We have the deed transfer," he said. "We have the bank authorization. We just need her signature. We can forge it if we must, but it is cleaner if she signs." Darren stopped pacing. "She won't sign," Marlene said, still smiling. "Then we make her sign." My stomach flipped. "Make me sign." Victor lowered his voice. "We bring her up. We tell her she had a fall. We tell her the doctor needs her to sign insurance papers. If she refuses, we pressure her. If she screams, we say she is confused." I felt sick. That was the plan. They were going to pretend I was not in my right mind. They were going to steal my home and then tell everyone I was confused, so nobody believed me. And suddenly, I understood why Darren said, "Nobody will believe you." Because he was going to set it up that way. I backed away from the window, shaking. My mind raced. I needed evidence. My neighbor's camera helped, but it would not capture inside voices. I needed them to say the plan clearly where it could be recorded. Then I remembered something. Elise once gave me a small voice recorder for doctor visits. She said, "Mom, record what the doctor says so you don't forget." It was in my purse. And my purse was likely upstairs. I stared at my back door. If I could get in without them seeing, I could grab the recorder. It sounded crazy, but my life was already in a crisis. Sometimes you have to do the hard thing. I crept around the back. The door was locked. Of course. Then I saw the small basement window again, the one too high from inside but reachable from outside if you use the garden bench. Henry had placed that bench years ago. I moved the bench under the window, heart hammering. If I opened that window, I could drop into the basement again. The same basement I escaped from. But this time, I would be choosing it. I swallowed, then lifted the window. It creaked softly. I froze. Inside the house, the voices stopped for a moment. Then Darren said, "Did you hear something?" My breath caught. Because if they came down, they would find the window open. And they would know I was not trapped anymore. I held my breath so long my chest burned. I stayed frozen on the bench, one hand on the basement window frame, waiting for footsteps. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then Victor said, "Probably the pipes." Old houses make noise. Darren let out a short laugh, but it sounded forced. Yeah, old house. Marlene said, stop being jumpy. Just finish this. Their conversation resumed, and my legs almost gave out from relief. I lowered myself carefully through the basement window and dropped onto the concrete floor. Pain shot up my ankles, but I stayed quiet. I was back in the basement, the place that smelled like dust and fear. But this time I was not a prisoner. This time I was a witness. I moved slowly and found the bottom of the stairs. I listened. Their voices were still upstairs, in the dining room. If I went up the stairs, I could be caught. I needed another way. The basement had an old storage closet under the stairs. It had a small vent that led up toward the kitchen area. Henry once used it to run wires. If I stood on a crate, I might reach the vent and hear their voices more clearly. I dragged a crate over and climbed up. My knees shook. I reached the vent cover and gently pressed my ear against it. Now their voices sounded closer, clearer. Victor said, Darren, I need to be blunt. You are drowning in debt. Darren snapped, I know. Victor continued, the loan sharks are not patient people. They want payment. And if you cannot pay, they will come after you and everyone connected to you. Marlene said, that includes me. I don't want those people at our door. My mouth went dry. Loan sharks. So that was it. Darren had not just borrowed money from a bank. He had borrowed from dangerous people. Victor said, this house is the solution. We transfer it, then we sell it fast. With the money, we wipe the debt and start fresh. Darren's voice cracked. It's my mother's house. Marlene answered like she was swatting a fly. And, she won't live forever. We are just getting it early. I felt a wave of sadness so strong it almost knocked me off the crate. They were talking about my life like it was a calendar page they could tear off. Victor said, the pension account too. If she signs the bank authorization, you will have access to the funds. Darren said, she will never give me full access. Marlene said, then we make her scared enough. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stop a sound. I felt like I might vomit. Victor's voice grew colder. This is why we need the notary. Once the papers are signed and stamped, it is much harder to undo. Darren asked, when is the notary coming? Victor checked something. In 1 hour. 1 hour. They were going to bring me upstairs in 1 hour, tell me lies, and force my signature. I needed to act before that. I climbed down from the crate and moved across the basement. I found an old tool shelf and opened the drawer quietly. Inside was Henry's small screwdriver set. I grabbed the thinnest one. My plan was simple. Get upstairs, take my purse, grab the recorder, and get out. But the problem was Darren. If he saw me, he might hurt me. Not with fists maybe, but with force. With control. He already showed he was willing to lock me away. I went to the bottom step and listened again. I heard chairs moving. Footsteps. They might come to the kitchen soon. If Darren walked into the kitchen, he could hear the basement creak. I needed to move now. I climbed the stairs slowly, holding the screwdriver in my fist like a tiny weapon, though I knew it would not protect me much. At the top, the basement door was still locked from the outside. Of course. I looked at the lock. It was the kind you could open with a key. I did not have the key. Then I remembered Henry's trick. When our bathroom door used to jam, Henry would slide a thin piece of metal between the latch and the frame. If the latch was not deep, it could pop open. I had a thin screwdriver. It might work. I slid the screwdriver into the crack and pressed gently. The latch resisted. I pressed again, a little harder, careful not to make noise. The latch clicked. My heart jumped. The door opened a tiny bit. I pushed it slowly and stepped into the dim hallway. The house smelled like home, like lemon cleaner and fabric softener. That smell almost made me cry, because it felt like the house was innocent, like it did not know it was being used for something ugly. I crept toward the staircase that led upstairs to my bedroom. My purse was usually on the dresser. If I could reach it, I could take the recorder. I moved step by step, listening for voices. They were still in the dining room, talking fast now, like people finishing a plan. I climbed the stairs, holding onto the railing. Halfway up, my foot slipped slightly. The stair creaked. The voices downstairs paused. Darren called out, "Hello." I froze, heart pounding so loud I thought he might hear it. Marlene said, "It's nothing." Victor said, "Probably the house." But Darren sounded unsure. "I'm going to check." Footsteps moved toward the hallway. I hurried up the last steps and slipped into my bedroom. My hands trembled as I grabbed my purse. I found the recorder in the side pocket and turned it on. Then I heard Darren's voice in the hallway outside my bedroom door. "Mom," he called. I clutched the recorder and backed away from the door. Then his hand touched the doorknob. And I realized something terrifying. If he opened the door and saw me, the plan would change. And people who feel cornered can do terrible things. The doorknob turned slowly, like the house itself was holding its breath. I stepped behind the curtain near the window, pressing my back to the wall. My heart felt like it was trying to climb out of my chest. The door opened. Darren stepped in. He looked around the room. His eyes moved across the bed, the dresser, the chair. He saw my purse was gone from the dresser spot. His face tightened. For a moment, he looked like a little boy caught doing something wrong. Then his expression hardened into something else. He whispered, "No." He turned and rushed out of the room, his steps heavy now, not careful. I heard him run down the hallway toward the stairs. I moved quickly to the door and listened. Darren shouted downstairs, "She's not in the basement." Marlene gasped. Victor swore under his breath. Darren yelled, "She escaped." My hands shook so badly the recorder almost slipped. I tightened my grip. Marlene said, "How could she escape? She's old." Darren snapped, "She is not stupid." Victor's voice was low and urgent. "Find her now. If she goes to the police, we are finished." Marlene hissed, "The notary is coming in less than an hour." Victor said, "Then we speed this up. We can still sign if we get her back." Get her back. Those words made my stomach twist. They were not talking about helping me. They were talking about grabbing me like property. I moved to the window and looked down. It was the side yard, the shrubs where I escaped. If I climbed out, I could run to Mrs. Patel's house again. But Darren might see me. Then I heard Darren's steps pounding upstairs. He was coming back. I moved fast. I climbed onto the bed and opened the window. Cold air hit my face. I pushed the screen gently. It gave a little. Behind me, the hallway floor creaked. Darren was near. I slid the screen out and leaned out the window. It was a short drop to the grass, but at my age, a short drop can be a big risk. I heard Darren at the door. "Mom." I did not answer. He shoved the door open. His eyes locked on me in the window. For a second, we stared at each other. My son looked shocked, like he could not believe I was choosing escape over obedience. Then his face twisted with anger. "Mom, stop," he shouted. "You're going to hurt yourself." I spoke calmly, even though my voice shook. "You already hurt me." Then I climbed out. The drop hit my knees like a hammer. Pain shot up my legs. I stumbled but did not fall. Darren leaned out the window and shouted, "Mom, come back inside." I ran, half limping, across the yard toward the fence line. I heard the back door slam. Darren was coming after me. I made it to the gate near Mrs. Patel's yard. My hands fumbled with the latch. Behind me, Darren's footsteps pounded closer. I got the gate open and slipped into Mrs. Patel's yard, then pushed it shut. The latch clicked. Mrs. Patel opened her back door immediately, like she had been waiting. Her eyes widened when she saw Darren running behind the fence. I knocked 3 times hard on her door frame. Mrs. Patel did not hesitate. She grabbed her phone and dialed. "Police," she said, loud enough for Darren to hear through the fence. "My neighbor is being threatened." Darren froze behind the fence. He looked toward us, eyes wild. "Mom, what are you doing?" he shouted. "You're ruining everything." I stepped forward so he could see me clearly. I held up the recorder in my hand. "No, Darren," I said. "You ruined everything." His face changed. He looked scared. "Now, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You locked me up. You planned to steal my house. You planned to say I was confused." Marlene's voice called from my yard, sharp and angry. "Darren, get her." I turned and saw Marlene standing near my back door. Victor stood behind her, holding the folder, eyes darting around like a rat looking for a hole. Victor saw the recorder in my hand and his face went pale. He whispered to Marlene, but I could still hear it, "If that device has audio, we are done." Marlene snapped, then take it from her. Darren looked trapped. He looked like a man who wanted to run and a son who wanted to hide. In the distance, I heard it. Sirens. The sound grew louder. And then, as if the day needed one more shock, a car pulled up in front of my house. A woman stepped out holding a briefcase. She walked toward my front door and called out, "Hello, I'm the notary." Victor's head snapped toward her. He muttered, "We still have a chance." Marlene started walking toward the street fast. And Darren, in one sudden move, jumped the fence. He was coming into Mrs. Patel's yard. Straight toward me. Darren landed clumsily in Mrs. Patel's yard, breathing hard. His eyes were wide. His hands were open, but his body was tense, like a person deciding what to do next. Mrs. Patel stood between us, holding her phone. "The police are coming," she said firmly. "Do not touch her." Darren looked at Mrs. Patel like she was an annoying problem. Then he looked at me. "Mom," he said, voice breaking, "please. Just give me the recorder. We can talk." "We already talked," I said. My voice was quiet, but steady. "You said you needed time to think. Then you locked the door." Darren swallowed. His shoulders sagged for a moment, like he remembered he was my son. "I didn't want to do it," he whispered. I answered plainly, because the truth needed to be plain. "But you did do it." He shook his head. "I was scared. I owe people money." I nodded slowly. "I heard you. I heard everything." Darren flinched. "You were listening." "Yes," I said. "I heard you and Victor. I heard Marlene laugh about tricking me. I heard you talk about forging my signature and selling my house." Darren's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, they said they would hurt me. And you decided to hurt me instead," I said. Behind the fence, Marlene was still near my house, pacing. Victor stood by the driveway, staring toward the street where the notary waited near the front door, confused and unsure if she should step inside. Then the police arrived. 2 cars. Then another. The sirens quieted, but the presence of the officers felt loud. 2 officers walked up quickly, hands near their belts, eyes scanning the scene. One officer spoke clearly. "Ma'am, are you safe?" Mrs. Patel pointed to me. "This is Margaret. Her son locked her in the basement." The officer looked at Darren. "Sir, step back." Darren raised his hands. "I didn't hurt her." I said, "You locked me in the basement and told me nobody would believe me." The officer's face tightened. "Ma'am, do you want to press charges?" I took a breath. My hands still trembled, but I stood tall. "Yes," I said. "And I have evidence." I held up the recorder. "This has their plan. They talked about taking my house and my money. They talked about making me sign papers or forging my signature. They talked about telling people I am confused." The officer nodded. "We will take that as evidence." Another officer walked toward the fence line and called out, "Ma'am, sir, come here." Marlene's face went stiff. Victor tried to step back, but the officer's voice sharpened. "Now." Victor's confident look vanished. He lifted his hands slowly. "There's been a misunderstanding." "No," I said, loud enough for them to hear. "There has been a plan." The officers separated Darren from me. They asked me questions. I explained everything clearly, from the basement lock to the crawlspace escape to the conversation I overheard. I told them about the safe and what was inside it. I told them about the notary coming. I told them why Darren did it. I said it plainly, because it was the truth. Darren got into serious debt. Victor helped him. Marlene pushed him. They wanted to transfer my house into Darren's name so they could sell it fast and pay off the debt. They thought I was old enough to control and scare. They planned to say I was confused so nobody would believe me. One officer wrote quickly. Another listened closely. Then the officer asked, "Do you have other family?" "Yes," I said. "My daughter Elise." They let me call her. When Elise answered, I did not cry at first. I simply said, "Elise, I need you." Darren tried to steal the house. There was silence on the line. Then Elise's voice turned firm. "Mom, I'm coming right now. Stay with the police." Within an hour, Elise arrived. She rushed to me and hugged me gently, careful of my sore knees. "Mom," she whispered, "are you okay?" "I'm hurt," I said honestly. "But I'm here. And I'm not silent anymore." The police spoke to Elise too. They explained the situation. They took my recorder. They asked Mrs. Patel for her camera footage of the driveway and yard. They also spoke to the notary, who was shocked and upset. The notary confirmed Victor had contacted her to witness a signature and stamp documents. She handed over the folder Victor tried to bring. Inside were papers that would have transferred my home and given access to my accounts. Some lines were blank, waiting for my signature. My signature. Elise looked at Darren across the yard. Darren sat on the curb with an officer beside him, face in his hands. He looked small. He looked broken. Marlene was arguing with another officer, insisting this was family business. Victor kept saying, misunderstanding, like it was a magic word. But the truth does not disappear when you call it a misunderstanding. That afternoon, Darren, Marlene, and Victor were taken in for questioning. Later, we learned more. Victor was not just a friend. He was a man who made money by pushing desperate people into risky deals, then pressuring them to use family property to escape. He had done it before. Darren had been hiding his debt for almost a year. Marlene knew and wanted a fast solution. They chose my house because it was paid for and valuable. Darren confessed. He admitted locking me in the basement. He admitted the plan to pressure me to sign. He cried when he said it, but tears do not erase choices. Because of the evidence, the paperwork was stopped before anything could be filed properly. Elise hired a lawyer the next day. We put legal protections in place. We locked my credit. We updated the deed records. We made sure nobody could transfer anything without Elise and my lawyer present. I also changed my will. Not out of revenge, but out of reality. Weeks later, I sat at my kitchen table with Elise. The house felt different now. Like it had survived something and learned to breathe again. Elise asked softly, "Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "About Darren. About the letters. About your worries." I looked at my hands. They were older hands, but they still worked. They still held the safe key. They still opened doors. "I thought silence would keep the family together," I said. "I thought if I stayed calm, things would fix themselves." Elise reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Silence almost got you trapped forever." I nodded. Yes, that was the lesson. Not a lesson from a book, but a lesson from my own life. Trust your instincts. Speak up when something feels wrong. Do not let love turn into blindness. And never think age makes you powerless. Because at 82, I crawled through darkness with my safe. I chose truth over fear. I chose my life over their lies. And Darren, he learned that a mother's quiet kindness is not the same as weakness. When I left that basement, I did not just escape a locked door. I escaped the danger of staying silent. And they truly never saw me the same way again.